The ground shook before the first scream reached my ears. I was pressed flat in the mud, my rifle jammed, smoke rolling over the trench like a living thing, and somewhere behind me, a soldier was shouting my name. There was no time to think. There was only the sound of something enormous moving through the fog, closer with every second. My name is Ethan Walsh, and that night on Kessel's landing was supposed to be the last night of my life. The enemy had dropped something onto our position an hour earlier. It came out of a metal pod that hissed white steam into the dark, and at first, none of us understood what we were looking at. It stood taller than any vehicle I had seen, built from parts of creatures that should never have existed together, with eyes that caught the firelight like small lamps. The soldiers called it a war creature because nobody had a better name for something built only to end lives on command. 3 handlers from the enemy side tried to guide it toward our line. They used hand signals first, then small devices that clicked and pulsed, then a voice command played from a box strapped to one of their wrists. The creature turned its wide head toward them slowly, almost thoughtfully, and then it simply stopped listening. It did not obey a single order. Instead, it turned on the very people who had built it, and in the chaos that followed, their control over it ended completely. Then it turned toward us. I want to tell you I did something brave in that moment. I did not. I stayed as still as I could, hoping the mud and the dark would hide me, hoping the enormous shape moving closer would pass me by. My rifle was useless, my hands were shaking, and every instinct in my body told me that staying silent was the only thing keeping me alive. The creature stopped directly above me. I felt its breath, warm and heavy, moving the hair on the back of my neck. 6 eyes studied me without blinking. I braced myself for the end. It did not come. Instead, the creature turned its body slightly, placing itself between me and the direction the enemy soldiers had gone. It was not attacking me. It was, somehow, protecting me, though I could not understand why. A voice called out from behind, sharp and urgent. It was Corporal Grace Whitman, one of the few soldiers from my unit still standing. She grabbed my collar and hauled me up from the mud while the creature stood watch, unmoving, like a wall made of muscle and instinct. "What is it doing?" I asked her, my voice shaking. "I don't know," she said, "but it just saved your life. Don't question it. Move." We ran together toward the camp, and the creature followed. Not on command, not because anyone directed it, but simply because it chose to. It kept pace easily, staying just far enough behind us that it never felt threatening, yet close enough that anyone watching could tell it had decided where it wanted to be. By the time we reached the camp, word had already spread. Soldiers stood at the edges of their posts, weapons raised, unsure whether to fire on the creature or wait for orders. General Priya Okafor arrived within minutes, her expression calm despite the tension crackling through the air. "Someone explain to me," she said, "why an enemy war creature just walked into our camp instead of finishing us off." Nobody had an answer. The engineers who examined it later found the command device fully intact, functioning exactly as it should. It was not a malfunction. It had simply never listened to a single order from anyone, not from the ones who built it, and not from anyone else either. Except me, or rather, it seemed to have decided to stay near me, though I had done nothing to earn that. General Okafor studied the creature carefully, keeping a respectful distance. Then she turned to me. "Private Walsh, did you do something to it?" "No, ma'am. I was on the ground. I couldn't move." She looked back at the creature, thoughtful. "Then maybe that's exactly why it chose you. Everyone else tried to command it. You didn't try anything at all." Over the following days, the creature stayed near the camp, always keeping its distance from most people, but never straying far from wherever I happened to be. It would not take instructions from officers, engineers, or specialists brought in to study it. It ignored commands entirely, as though the very idea of being ordered around meant nothing to it. One morning, while I was repairing equipment near the edge of camp, 3 scouts came rushing in with urgent news. A group of enemy soldiers had been spotted moving through the nearby hills, likely searching for the missing creature. Panic spread quickly through camp, soldiers scrambling to gather weapons and prepare defenses. The creature, resting nearby, lifted its head the moment the scouts spoke. It rose slowly, moving toward the tree line with quiet purpose, and though nobody gave it any order, it seemed to understand exactly what was happening. "It's leaving," Grace said, standing beside me, her voice tight with worry. "Do you think it's going back to them?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Instead, I found myself walking toward it, ignoring the warnings shouted behind me. The creature paused as I approached, watching me with those calm, unblinking eyes. "You don't have to go," I said quietly, though I had no idea if it could understand a single word. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the creature turned away from the tree line and walked back toward the camp, settling down near the command tent as though nothing unusual had occurred at all. That night, the enemy scouts found our position anyway. Alarms rang through camp, soldiers rushing to their stations, tension thick enough to feel in the air. I grabbed my rifle and moved toward the perimeter, my heart pounding, unsure of what waited beyond the tree line. The first enemy soldiers appeared through the fog, moving quickly and quietly, clearly hoping to catch us unprepared. Before any shots were exchanged, a low sound rumbled from somewhere behind our line. The ground trembled slightly, and moments later, the creature moved past me, positioning itself directly between our soldiers and the approaching enemy. The enemy scouts stopped in their tracks, clearly recognizing the creature they had lost control of. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the creature let out a sound unlike anything I had heard before, deep and powerful, echoing across the open ground. It was enough. The enemy soldiers retreated quickly, disappearing back into the fog without engaging further. Camp erupted into relieved shouting, soldiers lowering their weapons, some laughing from sheer release of tension. Grace found me near the perimeter, her expression somewhere between amazement and disbelief. "It just saved the entire camp," she said, "without a single order." I nodded, still processing everything that had happened. The creature returned to its usual spot near the command tent, settling down calmly, as though nothing extraordinary had occurred. General Okafor called a meeting later that evening, gathering officers and specialists to discuss what had happened. Reports were shared, theories debated, but nobody could offer a full explanation for the creature's behavior. It had been built to follow commands without question, yet it had never followed a single one since arriving in our camp. "Perhaps," said Dr. Naomi Ellis, one of the specialists studying the creature, "it was never truly built to obey. Maybe it was simply waiting for a reason to choose something on its own." The theory made sense in a strange way. The creature had ignored every order given by its creators, every attempt at control, every device designed to command it. Yet it had chosen, entirely on its own, to protect people who had given it nothing except the absence of demands. Over the following weeks, the creature remained close to camp, occasionally wandering the perimeter at night, always returning by morning. Soldiers grew more comfortable around it, though a healthy respect remained. It never responded to commands, never followed instructions from anyone in uniform, yet it consistently positioned itself wherever danger seemed most likely to appear. One evening, sitting near the edge of camp with Grace, I found myself watching the creature rest nearby, its massive form outlined against the fading light of sunset. "Do you think it understands what it's doing?" Grace asked. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think it understands something more important than instructions. It understands choice." She smiled faintly, watching the creature settle further into rest. Maybe that's exactly why it stayed. Nobody ever gave it a reason to choose anything before. Word of the creature's actions eventually reached command far beyond our camp, sparking curiosity among strategists and scientists alike. Requests came for relocation, for study, for controlled environments where its abilities could be examined more closely. Each request was met with the same result. The creature refused to leave, remaining stubbornly close to the camp it had chosen, and more specifically, close to wherever I happened to be standing. General Okafor eventually stopped pushing for relocation, recognizing perhaps better than anyone that forcing the issue would achieve nothing. Instead, the creature became an unofficial guardian of our camp, moving quietly along its edges, watching over soldiers who had, at some point without realizing it, stopped fearing it entirely. Months passed, and though danger never fully disappeared from our lives, a strange sense of safety settled over camp whenever the creature was near. It never took orders, never responded to instructions, never behaved the way its creators had intended. Yet every single day, without being asked, it chose to stay. I often think back to that first night, lying in the mud, certain my life was ending, only to feel the presence of something enormous choosing, entirely on its own, to stand between me and danger. The enemy had built a creature meant only to follow orders and end lives without hesitation. What they created instead was something capable of recognizing a difference nobody expected it to notice, the difference between being commanded and choosing freely. It never obeyed a single order from anyone, not from its creators, not from officers, not even from me. It simply chose where it wanted to be, and for reasons none of us fully understood, it chose to stay beside people who had never once tried to control it. That choice turned out to be far stronger than any command ever could have been.